Season 17 of South Park was a pretty pivotal one. The prior season 16 wasn't really received very well, having many people thinking that South Park was going to go down the Simpsons route and continue solely for the sake of money. But thanks to season 17, we know that wasn't the case. While not being the longest season, it was packed full of bangers like Taming Strange, The Hobbit, and of course, the iconic Black Friday trilogy. However, I think that a ton of people slept on the opening episode for this season, Let Go, Let Gov. It gave us some of South Park's most iconic clips, and finally let us know what would happen if Cartman of all people was able to sneak his way into the American government. So enough with all this intro, let's break down this episode. This episode starts off at the bus stop, where Kyle is complaining about people who'd like to talk on speakerphone in public places. Then comes in Cartman, doing that exact thing, and as always, Cartman puts up a generational performance, not caring about anyone around him, and performs a perfect rage bait with impeccable technique.
You needed me to play, so I just played through the pain, you know what I'm saying? That is not what happened! You totally started crying and quit the game! Kyle, this is a private conversation.
Eventually, Cartman mentions his theory about how the NSA, or the National Security Agency in America, is listening in on everybody's phone calls. This leads him to organizing a rally at school to protest the NSA. Because we all know that a protest led by 4th graders is definitely going to be taken very seriously. Anyways, while organizing this rally, Cartman decides to tell everybody about the fact that the government is watching them at all times. Everyone mostly ignores him, but not the naive Butters who just had the amazing revelation that he's always being watched by the government, leading to this iconic clip where Butters prays to the government and of course Obama.
Hey government, it's me. Butters. I just want to say, well, thanks for watching over me and doing everything you do.
Real quick, before we continue, if you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing. This is actually the very first video uploaded to this channel. So if you're into South Park or cartoons in general, a sub would be massive. Anyways, let's get back into it. The next day while in the computer lab, Cartman comes to the conclusion that he must be being tracked because Amazon suggested that he wanted to buy Star Trek on Blu-ray while looking to buy GTA 5. This being his breaking point is such a perfect pick by Matt and Trey because Amazon's suggested items is probably the most straightforward advertising algorithm there is. So this being his breaking point is very rightfully absurd. But to be fair, it's not completely out of the question, since this episode is actually based on the real-life events of the 2010s global surveillance disclosures in the US, where it was revealed by Edward Snowden, an ex-NSA contractor, that they were spying on American and even foreign citizens. If it wasn't already clear, Cartman is going to be our Edward Snowden for this episode. Anyways, for Cartman, the only logical step after realizing that he's being tracked is for him to get a job at the NSA and expose all their secrets on Twitter. But before he can go through with that, he makes the brilliant decision to join Alec Baldwin's new social media platform by installing antennas to broadcast his thoughts straight to the internet. A lot of people who watch this episode seem to believe that this subplot is just brain-dead humor, but it actually provides some very good satire. It's trying to show how even the people who are the most frustrated with the NSA spying on them don't see the irony in giving up all their data, which in this case is their literal thoughts to a random private company, but they are livid if the government has it. It's not the perfect satire, of course, because it is illegal and messed up to spy on people without their consent, but it does prove the point that there are plenty of people who succumb to selective outrage. Now, going back to the B-plot, Butters decides to go to the DMV to confess his sins, which in this case was yelling at a midget. After being quote-unquote forgiven, he walks away happy as ever with a newfound faith in the government. Next we see Bill Clinton, who goes to get a job at the NSA. And just like in real life, the understaffed US government give him the job on the spot. During his introduction, they reveal to Cartman that they do in fact listen in to everybody's conversations. For example, one of them being a girl asking their friend if they want to watch a movie together because that's vital information for the government to know, and exactly what the NSA was doing with the records they were keeping. Meanwhile, Butters is able to convince 2 Jehovah's Witnesses to accept the government into their hearts, and with their help, go to convince Craig to do the same. Back at the NSA, Cartman decides to ask about whose emails to check first. He's told that everybody has a file marked with the threat level, and the more attention they pay to a file, the bigger it becomes. Without skipping a beat, Cartman decided to ask about how big his own file is, only to be revealed the horror that his file was marked as fat and unimportant. He goes on to try and convince the head that they're wrong and that Eric Cartman is a threat to national security. But they won't budge, because apparently the central computer didn't agree. This is another good little bit of poking fun at all the outraged people who really think they are that important for the government to care this much about them. Anyways, you're probably thinking, what is the central computer? Well, after some pestering, they reveal to Cartman that the central computer is powered by Santa Claus. And that's how they're able to tell who's a threat and who's not. But before he can explain further, Cartman exposes that he's been live streaming everything the entire time, and now everyone will know the truth. So what did everyone think of this? Well, they didn't care. At all. And Cartman could not take the heat. At this point, he believes his only path forward is to move to Russia and live with the commies. This is another reference to Edward Snowden and the global surveillance disclosures, since Snowden was hit with charges of espionage and theft of government property and had to take refuge in Russia to avoid them. Technically, he was trying to get to somewhere in Latin America, but got stopped before he could board his connecting flight. But luckily for him, the US government aren't able to get him in Russia, and now he's actually become a Russian citizen. Luckily for Cartman in this case, Butters comes knocking on his door to convince him to believe in the government, and with the prospect that all his sins will be forgiven, he takes a leap at the chance. Now at the DMV, Butters and all the recently converted members swear Cartman in. This positivity leads the DMV workers to embrace the change and actually try to help people with their confessions. But just like all other places for confession, they got shut down for diddling little boys. One thing I also noticed is that the satire of this subplot is also equally misconstrued just as much as the main plot, which is a shame because it's really well done and ties into the main plot very well. It tries to show us another aspect of the irony about caring so much about the government spying on you when you live in a country where people literally treat the government like a god or a religion. My one major gripe with this episode though is that it does sorta come off like Matt and Trey are trying to brush off the severity of the NSA spying on people. Like, I understand and appreciate the art of dunking on self-centered people who believe the world revolves around them, but at the same time, it doesn't actually change the fact that according to a former NSA agent, 80% of audio calls were actually recorded and stored in the US. Luckily though, the Butters plot partially alleviates this concern for me, since the satire of the subplot perfectly contrasts the satire of the main plot. Instead of piling more jokes on people mad at NSA, with this subplot they make fun of the opposite group of people who put way too much faith in the government. It's such a classic move by Matt and Trey to play both sides of the argument, and it's what makes South Park so good. It's also a really good point to make, cause let's face it, some Americans love their country a little too much and will literally let them get away with anything sometimes. But like I stated previously, I think a lot of people didn't really pick up on this contrast that they were going for. For example, when I was researching for this video, I looked at some opinions of people who watch it on release, and I saw this comment stating that they thought the Butters plot was unnecessary. But for all the previously mentioned reasons, I think that would take so much away from this episode. Without it, the only way we would know people trust the government way too much is from the fact that they don't care about Cartman's expose. Oh, and don't forget, without the Butters plot, we wouldn't have the quick jab at religion and kid diddlers, which is always a plus. Anyways, that was my interpretation of this episode and why I enjoyed it so much. But I'm super interested to see what you guys thought of it. I feel like it's really open up to different interpretations, so be sure to let me know what you guys thought. Anyways, later.